I'm Father John-Michael Lavelle. On this episode of the Catholic Echo podcast from the Diocese of Youngstown, brought to you by the annual Diocesan Appeal and Cumulus Radio Youngstown, we're talking about stained glass windows in the Catholic Church. I'll be discussing this with Dennis Viviano, and we'll also have a presentation by Joan Lawson and Michael Irwin. Find more about this episode's topic, including articles from the Catholic Echo, at www.catholicecho.org/podcast. And now the host of the Catholic Echo podcast, Dennis Viviano.
Hello and welcome to the Catholic Echo podcast. Today we begin the conversation about stained glass windows and church artifact preservation and some projects around the diocese with the Vicar for Missionary Discipleship and pastor of St. Michael Parish in Canfield, Father John-Michael Lavelle. Thanks as always for joining us.
It's great to be here.
Now, you've referred to yourself as a lover of art, architecture, and liturgy. You've been in the diocese for 25 years and have had various renovation projects, and you began as pastor of St. Michael in Canfield in 2021. Can you talk about some of the projects you've taken on over the last 4 years, as well as the stained glass windows project previously at St. Joseph the Provider in Camel?
Well, St. Michael is a beautiful structure in Canfield and was built in the early 60s. So after 60 years, there's always a need to kind of look at a few things. One of my predecessors, Father Hazel, had put in some beautiful stained glass windows in the body of the church in 2000. So given that for almost 40 years, there was no stained glass in the upper part of the church, and he added that. But we needed to improve the lighting in the church. And then along the way, some other things. The main project that you alluded to with the stained glass, that came out of looking at the gallery that connects our church to our parish hall. And it originally was an open air gallery. And then when they built the parish hall in the late 70s, early 80s, they closed that gallery in so that you could, during bad weather, move easily from one structure to the other. The problem is, like any place, windows, the leading falls out, they start to crack, you need some changes. So we realized that we were going to have to change that, and we thought, well, if we're going to change it, should we open it up again and just make it an open air gallery? Should we redo the clear glass? Or could we add some color and some beauty to it? And so we started to look for windows. Now, to do original stained glass would have been astronomical and couldn't have been done. So, you measure the openings and you say, where in the world are we going to find 16 stained glass windows that are 36 inches wide and approximately 90 to 92 inches tall? Lo and behold, there were 16 windows just like that were being stored at Henninger's, religious goods company in Cleveland that we in the Diocese of Youngstown deal with. And we found that those windows came from Camel, Ohio, from the old St. Joseph the Provider Church. So it wasn't from somewhere in another diocese. It was a treasure from our own area.
The process of renovating a church, how has it changed from decades ago compared to now when some churches merge or close?
Well, from my own experience, my first pastorate began in 2003 at Immaculate Conception in Ravenna. And at that time, when the bishop asked me to go there, it was with the specific charge of repairing and remodeling some of the structures. And so I did that, and then when I was asked by the next bishop to go to Mount Carmel in Niles, it was kind of do the same thing. Now, of course, it's lived out differently. There's different people, it's different architecture, it's a different need. But what I've noticed, if I just look at my three pastorates, going back a little over 20 years ago, a lot of the things were new. If you were going to remodel, you ordered this from a catalog, you had this crafted by a stone cutter, this statue was carved new in Italy. A lot of it was new, and it doesn't mean that we weren't already closing places around the country or even in our own diocese. I don't know that we had such a deep appreciation for some of the things that were part of our churches. So I see the difference from having gone from almost all new things in Ravenna to when I got to Niles in 2012, we were able to use marble and altars and other structures that were from closed churches in Cleveland to some of the things. And certainly the work that I've been doing in Canfield at St. Michael is minuscule compared to the overall renovations of Niles and Ravenna. But we've been able to incorporate things from other churches right here in our own diocese. We have, of course, the windows from Camel. We have some statues and mosaics from Warren. So we've seen the need to preserve some of those treasures from other churches and incorporate them into our remodeling or our restructuring of things rather than just tossing them out and getting new.
And talk about that feeling when everything is put together, refurbished, and it's to your liking, and everybody gets to appreciate it. What's that feel like?
It's wonderful to know that there were people of faith who paid for and crafted and worshiped with an example of the windows in Camel for decades and decades. And that although that church building is no longer a worship site in the diocese, that people that grew up with that can come by. They're illuminated at night, so they don't even have to come into the church building. They can see them at night, or they can come to a mass and be able to see them. Or the image of St. Pius X that was part of a church named for him, that no longer is a worship site in Warren, but that statue, the Pope of the Eucharist, now is in a church near the tabernacle to be an inspiration to new generations about how to love God in the nourishment of the Eucharist. So just those little examples of how, knowing that there have been other people in the past that have journeyed with them, and now that journey continues into the future.
And with the stained glass windows at St. Michael that connects to the parish hall, it tells a story. You have the 12 apostles there, 12 out of the 16 windows. What else, other stories does that tell?
And this is something that we could not have designed better. The way the gallery works is we had an opening for 2 windows, then a set of doors, then 12 openings, and then another set of doors, and then 2 more openings. So the 12 apostles, to have the original 11 and then adding Matthias, to have that tell the story of those first disciples, those first people who followed Christ and then went and brought leadership to the church. The first 2, of course, are Mary and Joseph. It's very interesting that you have a church that was established as an Eastern European population, but the window that they chose for Our Lady was Our Lady of Lourdes, who of course was witnessed to in France by Bernadette in the mid-1800s. So we have Joseph and Our Lady of Lourdes, and then the last 2 windows are St. Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, who continued the work of the apostles, but then also St. Anne, the mother of Mary, the grandmother of Jesus. So each of those windows tells a beautiful story.
Anything else you'd like to share with us about upcoming projects you're excited about?
There's always something on the horizon. There's nothing concretely done now. What I'm excited about for the whole diocese, not just at St. Michael, but is the archival center that is to come, because we are recognizing a need to value many of these treasures. It is a sad reality that the population and the economy and the number of people practicing their faith doesn't sustain the structures of churches we had 50 years ago, but that we can, in some way, still treasure and pray with and journey with some of those beautiful artifacts.
And that really is a beautiful church, early 1900s. And looking forward to the future. This is a big year to come with the Archival Center. Well, thanks so much, Father Lavelle. Coming up after the break, we'll check in with the Diocesan Chancellor and Archivist, Joan Lawson. Much more to come when the Catholic Echo podcast returns.
The Catholic Echo podcast will inform and entertain the faithful of the diocese by covering various topics that are relevant in the church today. Bishop David J. Bonner begins the podcast with your host, Dennis Biviano, on the topic of the day, and then you'll hear from others with expertise on that topic. You can listen to the Catholic Echo podcast on WHOT-FM 101, WYFM-FM 102.9, WQXK-FM 105.1 on Sundays at 6:30 a.m., or catch it online by going to www.catholicecho.org/podcast. The Catholic Echo podcast is produced by the Communications Department of the Diocese of Youngstown.
Wondering what happened to timely Catholic news in the Diocese of Youngstown? It's at catholicecho.org. There you'll find recent stories about Catholic life in all 6 counties of the Diocese of Youngstown, plus recent videos, podcasts, and even national and global news. You'll find it all at catholicecho.org. Sign up for the email newsletter while you're there to have Catholic news delivered to your inbox.
When storms hit, we are there to rebuild. As our neighbors age, we lighten their burdens. As our veterans adjust, we ease their transitions. In every part of the country, we are there. We are Catholic Charities. We serve millions each year regardless of their faith. We put food back on tables, unlock doors, and walk together on the road back. Help Catholic Charities serve your neighbors in need. Join us at wearethere.us.
Hello and welcome back to the Catholic Echo podcast. We are now joined by Joan Lawson, the Chancellor of our diocese and archivist. Thanks as always for joining us.
Thanks. It's so nice to be here with you.
Well, you're here to give us a little historical perspective on repurposing stained glass and artifacts in churches, both on the local and national levels. How common is this practice? I guess, what did you find in your research?
It is common, especially in the northeast of the United States, as churches are closing due to changes in demographics, changes in neighborhoods, and as churches are building in other areas of the country, in the South and in the West, but also even within a diocese. So a diocese, if a church closes and it has merged into another parish, then very often artifacts from the closed church, there will be a way made for them to be incorporated into the church into which that one has merged, so that everyone is now sharing, reflects the heritage of everyone who are parishioners now. So it will go to the merge place. It can go within the diocese, as you know, within our own diocese, going from one of our closed churches to another vibrant church. And it can go within our diocese, for instance, to the chapel at Walsh, or to another parish that isn't one of the merged ones, but in another county or so on. It goes in steps, first to the place of merger, then to another one close by, then to our whole diocese, and then out to the whole country. So materials from our closed churches have gone, well, they've even gone to Canada, so it's international, through some of our connections with missionaries. I know we've had a monstrance go to diocese in Nigeria. Father Brins in the mission office has sent lots of materials overseas and to other areas of our country. And then from our closed churches, they've gone to the south, to Florida, North Carolina, Virginia. They've gone to the west, in California, even in Oregon, to the Midwest, and even back east, like to New York, New Jersey, for churches that are refurbishing or reworking. So the sacrifices that our faithful people made for our churches a century ago or more, to have the beauty that conveys the glory of God, those sacrifices then can be honored, and that legacy passed on to other places within our diocese or outside our diocese, or even outside our country, where those sacrifices can be honored and those devotions kept.
Last segment, we talked to Father John-Michael Lavelle and his project with the stained glass windows, 16 of them. He didn't realize that those items, until he dug into it, really found out those were from St. Joseph the Provider, and is able to repurpose those as that hallway area from the church into the parish center. How important do you think it is to keep that history alive? And the reaction from parishioners when they see that has to be one of joy.
Absolutely. And his project really highlighted the stunning beauty of those windows. And they carry with them that whole story of the sacrifices of the people who put them originally in the church in Camel. And then in Canfield now they can be seen up close. The glory of the colors can be beautifully revealed. And the heritage gets passed on. That story, that legacy gets passed on to more generations. I think it's so important to honor them while looking forward and saying, so it's from the past, but it gets used in the present for the intention of the devotion of the people and the glory of God, and then handed on to the future. So, there's 5-year-olds at St. Michael in Canfield now who can carry that memory forward into the future. So it's a beautiful story of continuity and honor and looking forward.
Now, you are very involved with the new archive facility at the former St. Cyril and Methodius Church. I guess, what are you so far most excited about?
Oh, I am so excited to get our materials out of the environments where they are unfortunately can't be as well cared for because of the high humidity where a lot of them are stored. So I want to get physical control over them so that they're in an environment where they can be preserved into perpetuity, but also really excited to get intellectual control. So materials that are in different places can all come together. We can put everything together, know exactly what we have, and be able to share that, to tell our story. I'm just thrilled to be a part of that project.
And you're working on that with Hannah Shaw. Where does it stand right now as far as, you're working on curating documents, on items? Are you tagging those? Are you logging those? Give us an example of an average day for you.
We do that on an ongoing basis. First of all, we're always answering research questions, whether they be from our parishes asking about their own history or from people wanting their sacramental history. We answer a lot of research questions, so that is part of our daily work. But also, we accept donations now. So, for instance, somebody had an uncle who was a priest of our diocese, and they had scrapbooks and photographs collected, and we were thrilled to get those because they weren't replicated elsewhere in our collections. And so we get them in, we tag them, as you say, we inventory them so that we know what we have, and then we also work on the backlog of what we have. So lots of our collections stored in basements or in other offices. We get those so that we inventory them, so that when someone calls and asks a question, we say, yes, we do have that. We know where that is. So that's exciting to be able to achieve physical control and the intellectual control so that we know what we're responsible for preserving and sharing.
Personally, has there been an item yet that you've been like, wow, look at this. I didn't know this existed.
Oh, absolutely. And you're catching me, try to think of one in particular, but probably items of particular beauty, like Bishop Walsh's chalice or his crozier that are particularly striking, but also things like a treasure trove of materials on refugee resettlement after World War II that priests in our diocese were helping with and were responsible for. Those are very human stories of getting people out of dreadful situations and bringing them to the area where they can have jobs and homes and sponsorship. So things that attract the eye, like a beautiful chalice, or the things that pull on your heart, like the story of being able to help a refugee family.
That's great. Joan, thanks so much for your time. You can keep updated or check some backstories on CatholicEcho.org. Coming up, you will hear from a statue repair artist, Michael Irwin, about some of his ventures here in the Diocese of Youngstown. Much more to come when the Catholic Echo podcast returns. It's time for Patron Saints of the Diocese of Youngstown with your Bishop, David J. Bonner.
St. John Neumann emigrated from Bohemia to the U.S., where he became a Redemptorist order priest and Bishop of Philadelphia. He helped build nearly 100 schools in 8 years before his unexpected death in 1860. He is a patron saint of immigrants, sick children, Catholic education, and St. John Neumann Parish in Portage County, with 2 church locations in Mogador and Rootstown. His feast day is January 5th, so happy feast day of St. John Neumann to our friends in South Portage County. St. John Neumann, pray for us.
Did you know that the Catholic Echo magazine is delivered 10 times per year to 52,000 Catholic households in Northeast Ohio? That is more than 150,000 people. And the Catholic Echo website, CatholicEcho.org, has been averaging 30,000 views per month since it launched in February 2023. Advertise your business, special event, or service with the Catholic Echo in print or online. Email CatholicEcho@youngstowndiocese.org. Advertising discounts are available for Catholic institutions, as well as for businesses that commit to 5 or 10 issues in a year. Email CatholicEcho@youngstowndiocese.org or visit the advertising tab at catholicecho.org for more information.
Welcome back to the Catholic Echo podcast. I'm Colin Vogt, one of the staff writers here at the Catholic Echo, and today I'm joined by Michael Irwin, who is the lead volunteer for the Office of the Propagation of the Faith and Missions for the Diocese of Youngstown. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. For those who don't know, Mike was featured in our May issue story, Artifacts on a Mission by Mary Ellen Pellegrini. It was a wonderful article, so I'm so happy that we get to delve a little deeper into that today. So, Mike, why don't you tell me a little bit about the Office of the Propagation of the Faith and Missions?
What our part is, where we get hold of religious artifacts that are no longer needed, and we restore them, and then we find homes for them. And that could be anywhere here in the Youngstown Diocese. It could be as far away as Nigeria. Mm-hmm. We want to be sure that these artifacts are not just left in a room somewhere. We want to make sure that they are restored and given a proper home. They deserve that. And people deserve to see these things and have these as part of their lives.
Right, absolutely. And are they coming from churches or from people's homes, or what kind of mix is there from where you're getting these artifacts?
We receive them from churches. Sometimes we'll hear from a church that has found a number of items in their basement or in storage that they may have forgotten that they had. We get calls from families that do not want to just throw these things away or sell them at a garage sale. People seem to understand the importance and the dignity that these items should be treated with. So they reach out to us and we will pick them up and we will get them in storage, and then we will start working on restoring.
Yeah, what really stood out to me in this story, in this article, was just the incredible way that this office connects our diocese with parishes or mission churches that are emerging as parishes around the world. You know, it's so easy to kind of forget that we're part of this universal church. And when you hear the statue or the painting or, you know, whatever the artifact may be that you saw every day in your grandparents' house could be in a church in Nigeria, it really brings that back into focus for us as Catholics. So it's such a special thing to be able to contribute to and be a part of. It's just really amazing.
It's part of our call to evangelize. And that evangelization isn't just about reaching out to people outside of the church to bring them in, but it's also reaching out to people within our faith and to help enrich their lives.
So what's your role in the office? What exactly do you do there?
Most of my work focuses on restoring statues. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of statues that some are very old, some are not so old, but they have been broken, they've been cracked, they've been moved here, there, or wherever. And what I do is I will take a statue, I will completely clean it, see what work needs to be done, and if I need to resculpt something that's broken off, noses, chins, fingers, folds in the clothes, I will then start filling those parts in, sand them in as if it doesn't look like anything had cracked or broken. Mm-hmm. I fill in cracks, and then I go forward with the repainting.
Now, how did you get involved with doing this? Was this like something you always kind of wanted to do, or you just enjoy it, or how did it come about?
I grew up very geeky. I grew up with...
That's not immediately apparent. He's very cool.
Very much, if it had anything to do with superheroes, monsters, robots, or spaceships, I was all over it.
Okay.
And my dad, knowing that, and also sharing some of that interest with me, got me interested into building model kits. So from a very young age, I was building model kits, never stopped. And somehow that has branched out into my appreciation for how well statues are sculpted and the beauty behind them, and how God inspired the artist to sculpt a saint a particular way. And that just got me into offering, I think I can repair this for you. I think I can fix this. And I found out that I could. I didn't know how I could do it, and to this day I'll accept a statue to repair, and not always knowing how I'm going to do it, but I just tell myself it'll happen. And hopefully with the help of St. Joseph, I will be inspired on finding the right way to get something done.
Right. It sounds like that's quite an opportunity for you to kind of deepen your faith, or kind of interact with God in a way and saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to trust that you're going to show me the way.
God gives us senses for a reason, and we have these senses to appreciate the beauty of his gifts to us through the saints, through the Blessed Mother, through himself. And you always know when you walk into a Catholic church. Mm-hmm. You always know when you walk into a home of a Catholic individual. And those statues and the tabernacle and all the beautiful work in the glassware, you're surrounded by it. And whenever I see these things, I always ask, how did the artist do this? Mm-hmm. What inspired that artist? I'm just in awe when I see these things, and they should be shared.
I think that's exactly right. That's one of the beautiful things about being Catholic is that we have these beautiful objects and this art. Like you said, you walk into a church and it's a Catholic church. It has this divine inspiration behind all the things that you see there, and I think that's really special. And it's like you said, God gave us senses for a reason. We can observe him in the natural world. We can observe him in the creation of an artist. So that's really special. And it's wonderful that you're also contributing to that as well with your skill and your artistry too. What do you find most rewarding about this work?
The challenge that I often am faced with, what's the best way to go about making this like it was? Mm-hmm. So that is the part I enjoy the most. It's that challenge. The second thing I enjoy is from time to time taking the opportunity to add a little bit more to that. For example, whenever I'm given a statue of the Blessed Mother, and she's often standing on the globe, a lot of the older statues have the globe just as a regular flat bluish color. I tend to like to punch that up a little bit and look at actual pictures of how the Earth looks from space and mm-hmm. put a little bit more of that detail in there. So when people look at that, they know, okay, she is Queen of the Earth. There's not just a globe there. So I do like to add a few other things to that, and it's very relaxing for me.
Yeah, beautiful. Quick question. What's your favorite, divine-inspired statue or religious kind of art piece, if you have one?
I'm mostly moved by images of the Blessed Mother. We have a standard version in our minds of how the Blessed Mother looks. We see so many of the standard statues of the Blessed Mother we see in people's yards. But it's when I see the Blessed Mother in a different pose, if she's on clouds or if she's holding Jesus. Those are the types of statues, those are the type of images that really inspire me.
Is there a certain type of statue or a certain scene or saint or something like that that you tend to work with a lot in this office that you see more often than others?
I've done a lot of repairs with nativity sets, and I have a real strong fondness for nativity sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's quite a bit of repair I've done with those.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael, so much for joining us today. If you'd like some more information about this, you can refer back to our May 2024 issue, Artifacts on a Mission. And if you would like to help with the restoration efforts, you can invite Father Brins to speak with your parish organization, volunteer to collect, organize, take inventory, clean, polish, paint, do carpentry work, sculpt, and more. You can donate religious items that no longer have a place in your home or the home of your family members. You can make a financial contribution, of course. And for any more questions or information, Father Brins can be reached at 330-744-8451, extension 277, or at ebrinz@youngstowndiocese.org. Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to hear more about this or other topics, please visit catholicecho.org.
The Catholic Echo podcast is a production of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Your host has been Dennis Biviano. Have a blessed day, and may God be with you.